It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes along with Albie Amancona, Emily Carver, Benjamin Butterworth and special guest Alex Phillips. Now tonight on the show...
Why fat people aren't to blame for our broken NHS.
are the British prudish or prudent when it comes to nudity?
Why we need to open the borders and have more migrants.
And essentially, if you are a social justice warrior, you're probably doing the bidding of big tech and powers that you have no idea about.
And have we forgotten, folks? Easter, that old thing. It's 8 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5. This is the best Saturday night takeaway that you could order. We debate all the hot topics of the week and it's no holds barred. Every week you can join myself, Emily, Albie and Benjamin, and our special guest this week is the brilliant broadcaster, journalist and former politician, Alex Phillips. Welcome, Alex.
Now, each of us will get just 60 seconds to outline our argument. That's not a very long time at all. Then we all pile in. And of course, we want to know your views as well. Well, please do get involved. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll share the best ones. But before we kick off the show, it is your Saturday Night News with Bethany Elsey.
Good evening, I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom, and we'll start with some breaking news. 31 Ukrainian children who were taken from occupied areas during the war have been returned and reunited with their families. Moscow, which controls regions of Ukraine's east and south, denies abducting the children and says they were taken away for their own safety. Kyiv estimates nearly 19,500 Ukrainian children have been deported to Russia since Moscow first invaded. Last month, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for President Vladimir Putin on charges of war crimes and child abductions. And some other breaking news. The British-Israeli sisters who were killed in the occupied West Bank yesterday have been named. Rina and Maya Zakharan were shot in their car near an Israeli settlement in the Bekaa Valley. Their mother remains in a critical condition. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shared their photos on social media and sent his condolences to the family. Back here, a 12-year-old boy accused of murdering a grandmother in Sheffield has been remanded into secure accommodation. 60-year-old Marcia Grant was hit by her own car outside her home in Green Hill on Wednesday. The family released a statement after her death, describing her as warm and loving and a pillar of the community. The boy, who can't be identified due to his age, is due before Sheffield Youth Court again tomorrow. Nicola Sturgeon has spoken out for the first time since her husband was arrested, saying she has not been questioned by police. Former SNP Chief Executive Peter Murrell was taken into custody on Wednesday as part of a police investigation into the party's finances. He was later released without charge. The former First Minister described the past few days as traumatic, but says she intends to get on with her life and with her job.
Much as there are things I might want to say, I'm not able to do so, other than to say that, as has been the case, there will continue to be full cooperation. The last few days have been obviously difficult, quite traumatic at times, but I understand that is part of a process.
And the NHS Confederation is warning 250,000 appointments could be postponed due to a 4-day strike by junior doctors next week. Medics in England will walk out from Tuesday in an ongoing dispute over pay. The British Medical Association says the action could still be avoided if the government makes a credible offer. But the Health Department insists the strike must be called off before negotiations take place. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise you that you're in for a lively hour. Let's crack on with tonight's first debate. Up first, it's Emily Carver with the Carver Palaver, and she's going to tell us why the failing NHS shouldn't be blamed on podgy patients. Start the clock.
Yes, tax, 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 ban, ban, ban. That's the mantra of our public health lobby, isn't it? And they're back again. Former Minister under Tony Blair is now advising the government on the NHS, believe it or not. She thinks that the NHS is broken because people are too fat. So what's the solution? Of course, it's to tax the fatties more and more. Tax those sinners. Doesn't matter that the sin taxes are absolutely naffle to help our waistlines. The sugar tax, it was introduced in 2018. What's happened since? Obesity for children and for adults has gone up, believe it or not. It's just another cash grab that hits the poor the most. Yes, we all want people to be healthier, but the NHS isn't broken because people are putting too much into their mouths. It's broken because it's an antiquated system that's badly in need of root and branch reform. So remember, it's not you that is letting the NHS down, it's the NHS that is letting you down.
Nicely done.
There we go, 60 seconds. Darren, what do you think? Do you think that we're, what the sin tax is? Are we scapegoating fat people a little?
Do you know what, Emily? I think you put it really well there, because ultimately I think the people that are most passionate about the NHS staying as it is without any form of reform have to say, well, of course we're going to have to raise more revenue because we need more to get skin taken off people, excess skin and all the rest of it, if they've lost loads of weight. Everything is done on the NHS now. And I think a lot of people watching at home will be of the view, I've got an out left for you to tax, you know?
Well, that's true. I mean, we talk about the cost of living, yet the public health lobby are more willing than anyone else to just slap taxes on people who spend more proportionately of their income on food. And yes, we don't all eat healthily.
But look, hang on, let's take smoking, for example. Smoking and cigarettes are very heavily taxed. They have been for a couple of decades now. There was a complete change of direction to discourage people because of just how bad it is for people's health. And we've seen that the number of people that smoke now, it's about 6 million regular smokers. It's a fraction, literally a fraction of what it was a generation ago. And that's because it's too expensive for most people to do.
Alex...
And so doesn't that show that you do that with food and it could follow the same
I don't
route?
think so, because, Alex, isn't the fact that people are smoking less because there's been such a campaign in terms of the health effects? We all know smoking kills us, and also we've had, well, vaping accelerate, have we not?
Right, and actually you make a good point, because what we actually need when it comes to obesity is a proper public health campaign. The dietary advice that people have been given for decades now is terrible. It puts carbohydrates at the top of the food pyramid, saying this should be the majority of your intake. We know that Big Food sponsored a rollout of the low-fat diet, which in fact ended up having extra sugar in a lot of products, which has actually helped perpetuate and create this obesity crisis. The problem is not taxing people who, frankly, the ones who are obese are the ones who actually tend to resort to having to buy ultra-processed food to survive. It's about regulating the big food industry, and they are everywhere. They are pernicious. You know, you had McDonald's sponsoring the Olympic Games during the pandemic. You had Krispy Kreme handing out donuts to NHS staff. These are the people adding to waistlines, and obesity is a massive crisis and a big burden on the NHS.
Albie, do you think we should tax... Sorry, Benjamin. Do you think we should tax big food, as Alex says, or the consumer?
Well, I think you can tax both the consumer and big food by way of a sugar tax. One of the things that the sugar tax did was not just change people's behaviour, but it also made big food companies change the ingredients that were going into their foods that are making people obese. So actually, I think that the sugar tax actually seems to be quite an effective tool at making big businesses change the way that they operate and making people change their food habits.
Yeah, because actually, the real hit here is on the companies, because they know that the price of their products going up makes people less likely to buy it. And so instead of a tax actually being applied to the consumer, what you've seen in loads of examples, I'd put Iron Brew, the most popular fizzy drink in Scotland, as one, is that they reduced the amount of sugar so that the tax wasn't applied. And that works.
But it just tastes terrible, doesn't it? Does no one care about the taste of these foods anymore, Darren?
Well, you know what, though? If sin taxes were proven to work, I reckon that most people here might be saying, all right, well, hunky-dory, happy days, this is the best thing to do. But take Nicola Sturgeon, for example. Remember her? She put in place minimum unit alcohol pricing on alcohol to ban cheap booze, basically, being sold in supermarkets. She's probably in desperate need for a drink right now. But, you know, it didn't work, Emily, did it? Evidence tells us that it didn't work. All it did was make people poorer because people still want a drink, ultimately.
And Albie, you clearly weren't listening to my monologue, my spiel there, were you? Because I said since 2018, which is when the sugar tax came into action, obesity's only gone up. And guess what? The public health lobby, they were the ones who wanted to lock down everyone. Where's the peak in obesity? 2021, because everyone's stuck at home.
No one's arguing that there's a causal relationship between the sugar tax and obesity. People are just arguing that it's a useful tool when it comes to companies changing their recipes and people changing their eating and drinking habits.
Can I just say that, and Alex quite rightly hit upon it, a lot of big companies, whether it's fast food or things we don't even recognise as unhealthy, have put more salt and more sugar in those foods over the last few decades, and it's addictive. You know, I used to eat a lot of McDonald's, and I would notice, if I have a McDonald's once on, every now and again or something similar, I then crave it, because there's clearly the kind of salt and sugar content is addictive in those foods, and that's one of the reasons why companies, pile these foods full of it.
I think a big problem that we actually have is most people don't actually know what they're eating when they're eating it, especially when you're buying foods off the high street. If you're buying one of those sort of, big, milky, sugar-laden drinks from a coffee shop, especially the iced ones in summer, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of calories, but people don't realise they're ingesting those calories because they think, well, it's a drink, it's probably going to be OK. And so I think we need better regulation. It's interesting, isn't it, that the government's obesity czar has subsequently stood down saying this government's not doing enough to tackle the crisis, and they're not doing enough because of vested industry interests.
Well, what about personal responsibility? Do we believe in that anymore? If you gorge on junk food, is that not your fault? And the government, it's not the government's job to tell you or to try and tinker with recipes.
When it comes down to personal responsibility, there'll be a lot of people out there now going for a vegan diet thinking, well, this has got to be much better for me. Everyone's saying a plant-based diet is good, but they're actually still ingesting highly processed food full of additives, full of sugars, full of salts. The information is not there for people.
Well, you found the information.
Well, do you know, I was in Wetherspoon, the popular pub chain, the other day, and I went to have the vegan breakfast, or the veggie breakfast, I think it might have been, and it was 100 calories more than the regular one. And I was like, oh, well, hang on, that's not really a healthier option. And so I do think that information, so you've had the traffic light system on various food products in supermarkets.
Which is built on rubbish science, actually. It's actually not built on secure science, and this is a big problem. The science that we've been told, which is good for you, actually isn't.
Right, well, that's all we've got time for on that one. Let us know what you think about that debate. Do you think syntaxes work? Do you think they're moral, even? Anyway, up next is Albie, and he is going to talk about why Brits blush at the thought of nakedness. Let's start the clock, Albie.
Start that clock. Are British attitudes towards nudity prudish or prudent? Channel 4 shocked the nation this week with the launch of their new show, Naked Education, Dividing Opinion, a new television show about all things in the buff. Bosoms, breasts and bottoms. Adults stripping off in front of teenagers to teach the nation all about their bodies. Is this deeply concerning and inappropriate, as Tory MPs Miriam Cates and Jonathan Gullis say, or is it a useful antidote to airbrush pictures, perfect celebrities and unrealistic porn? Germans embrace FKK, free body culture. Many sunbathe, visit saunas and hike naked. It's not seen as voyeuristic or sexual, but natural and liberating. Is it time we Brits loosened up a bit? We all have bodies. Is a new TV show teaching us a little bit more about them really as horrific as some people say? What do you think? Are Brits prudish or prudent about nudity?
Well, there we go.
So it has been a bit of a controversial week for Channel 4. Many people are saying it might be a bit of a gimmick to get people talking about it, and we're talking about it this evening. But Alex Phillips, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this, because I know that nudity and pornography are things that you're very passionate about. And you've got very strong opinions about them. So I wonder what you think about this television show.
I think we've got to an age in society where you think, how much further can this go on? You know, how much more, when you've got, music videos that are basically soft pornography, it's feeding down into fast fashion, the way that teenage girls are dressing. When the government's having to legislate to stop minors from injecting their lips with fillers and getting Botox, you realise we do have a problem. And I don't necessarily think this, Naked Education show on Channel 4 is the problem, and perhaps it is helpful to address, what real bodies look like. But it is a symptom of our age, isn't it, that we live in a deeply pornified society now where sex sells, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of safeguarding preventing adult fetish being foisted onto young people.
And I think that's the crucial point, right? Because drag queen, oh my God, I cannot say it. Drag Queen Story Hour, that's quite the tongue twister, is in schools now, right? So I think, actually, let's just go to the clip and show our viewers what it is that we're actually referencing, because I don't think it's appropriate for kids. That's the fundamental point.
Is it cold? I couldn't look at them. I don't think my cat's even got that much hair. You're giggling quite a lot back there. I'm always the one that giggles.
Bobby, how do you feel?
I feel fine. Casual, cool. Yeah, not even bothered.
I mean, I've never been in a room with 4 naked people. They've never been in a room with 4 naked people. Maybe Dr. Alex has. I'm not sure. Elliot, you've got naked people standing in front of you.
Yes, I do.
Is this a new thing, a new experience? I'm guessing it probably is.
Yeah, it is a bit.
I mean, Albie, we were told, right, that we need Channel 4 because Channel 4 is there to educate the nation. If you ask me, Channel 4 is just there to spread perversion throughout
Flash the nation.
Well, look, as I'm a professional, I did actually watch the entire show, longer than that entire clip. And I watched it, and I was actually quite moved by some of the conversations they were having. There were conversations about postnatal depression. There were conversations about what normal body hair looks like, really important things, and actually we don't normally have in popular society. So to come back to what Alex was just saying, Emily, do you feel that actually maybe this is an antidote to some of the more pornographic parts of society because this is showing what real people look like?
Well, I'm not sure because some of the children there were 14 years old. I'm not sure how much benefit it is to see adults stripped off. But I want to ask you, what is the optimal level of nudity in society? Because you were talking about Germany, and yes, they sometimes like to, well, I think they like naturism more than us, that sort of thing. Sweden as well likes to be nude a little more. What's the optimal level?
I don't think there is an optimal level of nudity. I think it's up to individuals to decide what they want to do as long as they're not harming other people. I think that's the point. So the question is, are television shows like this, Darren, harming the teenagers, 14 to 16-year-olds that are watching this?
Well, as you rightly say, I haven't actually watched the programme, but as I understand it, they do have trans participation in the show. So to me, this is, they get that in schools these days. They get told that it's not a gingerbread man, it's a gingerbread them or something like that. They do. And now, gender ideology on Channel 4 News and within schools. It's everywhere. It's pervasive and it's perverted. I don't know why we need this in front of schools and kids.
But is it harmful, Benjamin, for people to see all different kinds of bodies, trans bodies or otherwise?
Well, I'll tell you what, if Emily wants fewer fatties, seeing those bums put me off eating for a long time. That was not, I'm sorry if you're eating your dinner at home right now. But look, I actually think, when I first saw about this programme, I felt uncomfortable about it. I thought it was a very peculiar idea. Is there not something a bit odd about having naked adults in front of teenagers? But actually, the naked body isn't inherently sexual. We have created and live in a society where the only way in which we see private parts of other people or the suggestion of those parts is in pornography or is in intentionally explicit music videos or films. Those elements of culture, we see people's bodies all the time and it's sexualised. And actually, I think especially for our generation and a bit younger than us, they are constantly subjected to artificial ideas of what other people's bodies look like. Often the people in the pictures don't even look like that. They've edited it. And so I think a programme like this, to see real bodies, to be comfortable with those bodies out of a sexual context and to be happy about the human form, I think that's a good idea.
And in that vein, Alex, should we take a more German approach to nudity? No. Should we be seeing more normal naked bodies in everyday life? The Germans are fine with it.
Well, Germans have been fine with things I'm not fine with for a long time. But look, if these characters stood outside the school gate in the buff, they'd get arrested.
Yeah,
it would be a form of child abuse, right? So I'm actually, it's quite disconcerting. I think there are arguments to make about normalising the body. I think that's true. But, I was on a skiing holiday in Austria over Christmas, went into the sauna, thought I was the only person in the hotel because I don't ski. Went down, sat in the sauna in my swimming costume because I'm not a German. And in came an entire Austrian family, all naked, mother, father, children. And honestly, I felt like it was just really uncomfortable. It was awkward. And yeah, no.
But,
I'm not
sorry. How long did you wait to leave?
Yeah, it was kind of like, you sit there and sort of play with the thermometer on the wall and pretend you're a bit hot. My time's up now, I'm going. I'm not part of family naked.
Can I just say, surely the problem with that was a problem that you had, not a problem that they had?
Of course it is, and that's very different, right? If there is I spend a lot of time in Scandinavia. I've been to Finland a lot, and you have naked saunas and non-naked saunas, and you choose which one you want to go into, and that's fine. If adults want to sit around naked together in a sauna, who am I to stop them? It's very different, adults standing there naked in front of teenagers, right? And I can see that this is a programme that has been thoughtfully put together, some might argue, but it does beg the question of, if that's acceptable, why can't parents turn up in the buff at the school gate? What's the difference?
Benjamin Butterworth, do you see the jump from Channel 4's Naked Education to parents turning up to the buff to pick up their children?
No, but I mean, look. On the one hand, you see naked bike rides, for example. Certainly in central London, that's something people do. And I don't. When I'm having a latte in Soho, I don't really want to see sort of 200 middle-aged men with their bits out, right? I think it's odd. But actually, I've been on a journey this week about this question because I think we should become more comfortable. I am not of that inclination. I have no desire to be a naturist. You'll all be relieved to know. I don't like to show my body off, right? I like to be sort of fully covered. That's my preference. But then do I have that preference because I have problematic ideas about what the body is meant to look like, and this would overcome it? And that's the conclusion I've come to.
But you know what? I'm not sure as a teenager it would actually make me feel more comfortable. I think it might actually make me feel more anxious. Seeing the naked bodies up there. It certainly might make me more fearful as a 14-year-old of the male body. If I saw a naked man standing right in front of me, or hairy with his genitals out, that would actually probably be quite an intimidating experience, and not something that I necessarily need to respect or enjoy even, or learn from at the age of 14, don't you think?
But a few years earlier than that, it wouldn't be remotely odd that a parent and their child, might see each other naked.
Well, I'm going to have to cut you off there, Benjamin, because coming up we still have, well, actually yours, the Benjamin's bugbear. Lex is vexed, and of course, Darren's debate. Benjamin is up first, though, and he's going to tell us about why he thinks we need more immigration. Don't go away, this could get spicy.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my common sense crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Cheers very much for joining us on the Saturday 5. Up next, it's Benjamin. He's going to tell her about why he thinks we need more immigration. Start the clock.
Buckle up, Britain. This is why we need more migrants in the country. Britain has an ageing population, a declining fertility rate, and we have the highest taxes that anyone of working age has ever known. The truth is that we don't have enough workers in this country. There aren't even enough people to look after the health and social care of our elderly. But not one politician in this country will say the bleeding obvious. We need more workers, and that means more immigrants. The birth rate in this country is expected to fall to just 1.45. It would have to be over 2 to maintain the current amount of population. And a third of people born today will see their 100th birthday. The truth is, immigrants contribute more than the average British-born person by £2,300 a year. If we're going to pay for pensions, if we're going to pay for public services, we need more workers to fill the 2.6 million vacancies that we're going to have in this economy by 2030. And that is why Britain should open the borders. But what do you think? I'm sure you all agree.
Silence.
Alex, you obviously were a Brexit Party MEP and immigration was a big question there. What do you make of this?
Look, it's about controlling our immigration, not stopping immigration altogether. And you do make valid points about needing migrants to come in and fill positions in vital sectors, such as the NHS, such as in fruit picking. But you just have to look at the statistics from the OBR quite recently on the projected rates of immigration, which is now going to be around 250,000 per year. You're talking about adding 1 million people to the population every 4 years. And what the OBR found is the rate of work, the rate of output in the incoming population is no different from the domestic population. So, yes, you might have more workers, but you also still have more mouths to feed around the table, more pressure on the NHS, more pressure on infrastructure, more pressure on housing. I mean, we don't have enough houses in this country. It's our generation that suffers from that. It's very clear that a lot of public services are under huge amounts of strain. We live in backlog Britain. And so you cannot just have unfettered immigration. You need to have sector by sector proper controls and a points-based system that works. The one we've got at the moment is defunct. It's useless. It hasn't done anything to stem the tide of people coming into the country. We need the right sort of workers with the right sort of qualifications, and we do need a cap so we can plan infrastructure.
But, I mean, look, I think it's clear that there are lots of sectors where there aren't enough workers. So you talk about the health and social care sector, which is one of the lowest paid and one of the toughest jobs. You know, the people that do that are just remarkable people, and they often do it for the most brilliant reasons. But how is it justifiable if you don't want many more migrants? Why do you say to someone's nan and granddad, oh, you can't get the health care that you need
I'm not saying that,
because there's no one in the country?
What I'm saying is you do need, where we have huge gaps in our labour market that need to be plugged, then absolutely we take talented people, people with the requisite skills from other parts of the world. But what we have at the moment is an immigration system that is allowing way too many people in that aren't contributing to the economy in the way that people argue that migrants can contribute to the economy, and instead of putting a huge strain on our public services. So what you need is a degree of discernment about this. You need to be able to differentiate between people who are going to come in and add to the economy and those people who are going to, frankly, be a drain on it. And there's another factor that people don't like talking about when it comes to immigration, and that is social integration as well. And the more you have communities that become balkanised, that become sort of polarised and live in their own sort of little streets and neighbourhoods and don't mix with the rest of the population, it puts huge strains on societies. You just have to go to some coastal communities and see how much their high streets have changed. And then you suddenly realise that this is a huge impact.
Albie, what do you think about that? Is it a problem of trying to get people from different backgrounds to integrate?
Look, I think over the years since we've had mass migration into the United Kingdom, there are some communities who have integrated much better than other communities. If I think about my grandparents who came over from West Africa, Ghana, in fact, and a lot of the Commonwealth migrants who came over in the 50s and 60s, I think people would probably argue that they were quite well integrated. But, of course, despite that, at the time, people were very anti them coming over as well, and they, of course, were coming to fill the jobs that we needed to be filled at the time. So there's always this issue, this disconnect between the jobs that we need filling in the United Kingdom and the jobs that the native population are willing to do. And it seems at the moment, for the past 40, 50 years, the way that we plug that is through immigration. I think actually what we need to do is encourage the native population to have more children so that we can actually fill these jobs with the native-born population. That's a long-term strategy, though. Immigration in the short term.
And I was going to put that to you, Darren, because Jacob Rees-Mogg...
Oh, good luck if you ask me to have children.
But, you'll find a wife eventually, I'm sure. But, Jacob Rees-Mogg of this parish put this argument argument on his programme recently that we need a pro-natal approach. We need people to have more kids. But I bet Jacob Rees-Mogg would oppose having mass immigration. So tell me, how do you square that? Because we need more people, and you're not going to get kids at 18 straight away. That takes 2 decades.
I think other countries do it much better than we do in actually encouraging people to get married and actually stay together and have children. We have a terrible system in this country, which I think we should actually encourage it through the tax system even. But I think many viewers, though, Benjamin, will be watching and saying, we had 500,000 people come here last year. It's predicted that 80,000 people are going to come over in those small boats, Tom, Dick or Harry. And it primarily is Tom, Dick or Harry, because it's young men coming over. And they're saying, what world are you living in which there isn't already mass migration to this country?
I mean, we know that the number of immigrants isn't enough because that's why so many sectors can't keep going. You go around this country and you will see pubs and bars and restaurants across this country have adverts in the window, we need more staff. You try to get a booking for a supermarket or to go in and see the shelves being stacked, they say we need more staff.
So you're basically...
Let me finish, because I'm sorry, but when you sit there and you say that we shouldn't have more immigrants, what you're saying to those British businesses is you can't grow, you can't sell those products because there's no one to do the job.
What you're saying to the British people, the working class, is that their wages don't matter and the depression of their wages are irrelevant to you because you want people in coffee shops.
But do you know why those companies, one of the reasons they're finding it hard to recruit people is because they're offering wages that are below par, that people can barely live on. And one of the reasons why is because housing and the rental market is just absolutely ridiculous. London, for example, I don't understand how someone on minimum wage working in a pub or in a supermarket or wherever can actually afford to live. And yes, you can get migrants from abroad who may all live, you know, in one tiny one-bedroom flat, 6 of them or whatever, for a couple of years, and then they go back home or whatever. But that's not really sustainable, and we need British people to be working in these jobs. So we need to come up with a more, you know, a more sustainable economy where not every year you're just encouraging hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to come to fill those basically those gaps. You just think, oh, migrants can take those
We shouldn't
jobs.
have an immigration cap, as far as I'm concerned. We should have immigration targets to try and get as many people here as possible. But there is another angle to that.
Where are they going to live, Benjamin?
Well, what I was going to say is that one problem we have with migrant money is the super rich Russians, Chinese, foreign billionaires who buy big glass towers, put them in places like central London, but no one actually lives in those homes. We need to stop that.
Well, on that note, that is all we've got time for on that one. Let us know what you think. But still ahead, Lex is vexed. Alex will fill us in on why she thinks protesters are being controlled by shady companies trying to keep us divided. Keep it here.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know, Kate Moss? Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks for joining us on the Saturday 5. It's been a lively night so far. Up next, it's Alex, and Lex is vexed. She's going to tell us why protests have stopped being grassroots movements. Start the clock.
Well, you're probably not one of them because you're watching this, but I bet you know one of those social justice warriors. You know, the ones who like to put twibbons on their Twitter profiles. They have those emojis in their handles. If it's not plant-based diets or taking the knee for BLM or getting your knickers in a twist about LGBTQ rights in Qatar, or, you know, talking about whether trans people have penises or don't have penises, you're probably doing the bidding of dark forces that you've got no idea about. You're either working on behalf of big tech, big food, or even worse, actual enemies of the West. Yep, I'm talking about foreign influencers who use farms of bots, essentially, to drive and amplify big debates in society in the West to tear us apart. No more is activism, people rising up to push progress in society forward. It's being imposed upon us from the top, and you really have to ask yourself why.
Well, there you go. You've got 5 seconds left. Within 5 seconds. Within a minute. Well, when I'm listening to that, I think, oh, there we go.
There we go.
Countdown is over.
A nice big clock somewhere. I don't have one in my head internally, although I should do as a broadcaster.
When I was listening to you, I was thinking of TikTok. I scroll through TikTok a lot, and it does seem to be that certain messaging is being pushed. And are you arguing that some of those content creators could be bots or...
There is a lot of content being created and certain campaigns that are being heavily forced upon us, which are being essentially curated and choreographed by people who do not have our best intentions at heart. You know, earlier on we started in this programme talking about obesity and the vegan craze. Well, it really helps big food if people get into diets that they can't make at home. So they can continue to manufacture stuff to sell us, even if it's not particularly healthy or good for us. One thing that really bothered me was the LGBTQ outcry in Qatar during the World Cup. But, I mean, we don't seem to have this when the England cricket team go and play in the West Indies, who also outlaw homosexuality. 2/3 of the world do, in fact. So why particularly Qatar? Well, I can tell you why. It's because at that moment in time, when OPEC were putting up oil prices to help Russia fund their war in Ukraine, Qatar was selling us LNG and getting us out of a very, very sticky hole when it came to the energy crisis. And did OPEC want that? No. Who was funding that campaign? It was the UAE and it was Saudi.
I mean, I just think that's practically conspiracy theory
It's not, no,
stuff.
It's true. Actually, it's true. It's not a conspiracy theory.
Well, it's not.
It is true.
It's not true, because I didn't care about the rights of gay or lesbian or trans people in Qatar because of oil prices. I cared about it because I'm a gay person, and I think that's a moral obligation that businesses that this country celebrates should be like.
You clearly had no idea, actually, that a lot of that campaign was being pushed and funded by the UAE and Saudi.
But it wasn't the point. It wasn't a campaign pushed by them. It was a campaign that millions, tens of millions of people in countries that are more progressive felt on an instinctive level. I don't think people watching at home thought that you shouldn't stone gays in Qatar because of the oil prices. They knew that inherently.
OK, so, Albie, what do you think about this? Do you think that all of these zeitgeists that are suddenly happening in the 21st century are organic, or do you think there's an argument to say that they're being created?
I would say that I take your point with everything you're saying about what happened in Qatar, but if I can speak about something which maybe I have a little bit more experience with, if I think about BLM, for example. Now, I know some of the people, much as I disagree with them, who arranged some of the BLM organisations in Liverpool, for example. Now, I know the people that organised BLM in Liverpool were not being funded by big tech, they were not being funded by big pharma, they were not being funded by big oil. These were people, black British people, who felt the way that they were being treated was wrong, and they wanted to do something about that. Now, whether or not I agree or disagree with how they did it, that's another thing. But I don't think those people were being influenced by some dark forces.
But do you notice how some campaigns suddenly gain traction and others don't?
But could they not just be gaining traction because they're actually good campaigns?
I mean, Darren, I think you're a really interesting person to ask on this, because you know better than most people what it takes to really push forward a digital campaign when it comes to politics, when it comes to activism, when it comes to getting a message across. And most politicians would die for the sort of coverage that organisations such as BLM got internationally. Do you see how they're quite possibly, or I'd say very definitely, other forces at work deliberately amplifying certain campaigns?
Absolutely. I think TikTok, frankly, will be the ruin of Britain, right? I think there is a real social contagion that goes on thanks to social media. We see that in the gender ideology trend. We see that in actually pushing some of the more, I think, outrageous claims that were made by Black Lives Matter, for example, that, you know, capitalism doesn't work for black people, when actually it's what's ensured that a lot of us don't die at childbirth, born working class, black or white. So I think there is a real problem with social media actually pushing these things and these messages. And actually, a lot of people with big pockets do ultimately have a bigger reach because they're able to get these messages out there.
But Alex, I'm really glad you brought Darren in, because of course you two were quite formative in the whole Brexit campaign, and what you will hear a lot of Remainers say is make exactly the same argument that you have made about BLM or about LGBT rights in Qatar, and talk about it with the Brexit argument. So, I mean, what do you say to that? Like, would you argue, is that a reasonable argument for someone who disagrees with you
If the argument is that foreign powers might have a vested interest in trying to coerce outcomes of elections and referendums in other countries, then actually it's backing up exactly what I'm saying.
So if a Remainer said to you, was there foreign coercion, and did that lead to Brexit? Would you say yes or no?
I think what we know about the way that social media works is that countries like Russia, countries like Iran, countries like China are really harnessing the power of social media to amplify certain things, and their end goal is to create division. It's not about one particular outcome or the other. You're likely to have those countries amplifying the fascistic, the hard right when it comes to the anti-BLM movement, as much as they're going to be pushing forward the BLM message as well. The point is to try and create division and make us get distracted, so we're at civil war and not dealing with the big geopolitical issues of the day.
I'm sorry, I think it's utter madness to compare Russian fascists' goals to those of black people in America and Britain, or gay people in Western countries.
I'm talking about geopolitical goals. But they're not talking about an individual or different action group.
But when these campaigns come about, it's because people are trying to use the power that business has and the companies that many millions of us work for to be better, because they have such sway in society. That is a progressive thing.
Emily, where do you stand on this?
Well, I'm just thinking about this because it's not something I've given too much thought about. But I do, as I said before, I do wonder why some campaigns seem to be pushed by the establishment or by corporates. They seem to all latch on to the same trends, whether it's the climate emergency, whether it's transgender rights, whether it's BLM, whether it's whatnot. But that might just be a preference for woke and sort of corporate social responsibility. But then I do wonder also, are we just pawns? Are we being played by these big tech companies?
What, to be nicer?
Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, they know so much about us. They know what gets us going. They know what we're interested in. They know what enrages us. They know what aggravates us. They know what makes us laugh. That is quite scary. And I think they're more powerful than governments. Right, now, we've still got one more debate to come on the show. And last but not least, it's Darren's debate. And he will be asking, why is Christianity being erased from Easter eggs? Plus, we'll hear from our wonderful viewers. So please don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the Saturday 5. Now, you've been passing us all of your messages. Well, I've been passed all your messages that are coming through. Daryl says, "Dear GB News team, I have to congratulate you on another excellent guest on the Famous Five." Famous Five, that's quite nice. Great to see Alex Phillips again. That's rather nice. Rob says, "The last thing we need is more people." That's in reply to Benjamin Butterworth. "The UK bottle is full and likely to burst!" ! Don't sacrifice the well-being of this country for cheap labour for big business. There you go. You're just a capitalist shill. Emily Carver, that was me. Emily Carver is right. Incentivise and utilise those we have here already. And Adele, on the obesity question, she wants to know why people... Oh, she's telling me why people are obese today. Supermarkets. I'm in my 70s. When I went to primary school, there were no supermarkets. Food was purchased in small amounts, consumed, freshly bought the following day. Supermarkets should take far more responsibility. Well, Alex, you like a market.
Oh, I love me a good farmer's market.
Fresh fruit.
And, you know, the interesting thing about that is the farmer's market is more money than the supermarket, but what you're getting is British produce grown locally to a very high standard. What you're actually paying for is food at the price that food should actually be. And I've got a big policy that I do not throw away food, especially not meat. You know, as far as I'm concerned, if an animal's died for that, you don't just disrespectfully chuck it in the bin.
That's a good point.
But so many people now will buy, you know, a big multi-pack of chicken breasts and, you know, eat 3, have them in the fridge until they turn green and go, oh, they're a bit whiffy, I'm going to bin them. What we need to do is actually get back to proper cooking. Like my grandma told me, how to buy a whole chicken and use it all and really enjoy it.
Bones, bone broth, that's what Gwyneth Paltrow likes. Very healthy. Right, I'll do one more. Paul says, good evening, Albie. My body is my own private property and the rest of society should be grateful for that. Others, in fact, should follow my rule. Right, now then, Darren is going to tell us why he is sick of companies turning their backs on traditional Christian Easter treats. Let's start the clock for the last time.
Well, folks, I don't know about you, but I'm getting absolutely sick of having to apologise for Britain being a Christian country. It's the King's coronation this year, next month, in fact. And guess what, folks? He's not defender of the faith this time. He's defender of the faiths. And for love nor money, you cannot find an Easter egg that says Easter on it. It is outrageous. You can get yourself a dinosaur-themed egg, though, if you want. Eggs, of course, being the symbol of the resurrection. They are Christ reborn. So to hell with that in multi-faith Britain. Our supermarkets say our established church is a national embarrassment to be ignored. You'll hear plenty on the BBC about Ramadan, though. We even had one police officer going round giving people gifts for Ramadan, but not Easter. We're sadly no longer proud of our nation's traditions. We welcome diversity and faith, but not of one religion in particular. And I think that that is a crying shame. Bring back Easter, folks, and I will be eating this afterwards.
Well...
Oh, Darren,
Come on then, Albie. What do you think?
What can I say? Well, you see, there was a slight factual error in what you were saying when you were talking about the fact that for neither love nor money you can find an Easter egg which actually says Easter on it. Because right here in my hand, I have managed to find an Easter egg-type condiment, sweet, over here, which has got the word, does that say...
It says Easter, but that's not an egg.
I think it says Easter on it. So you can buy Easter chocolate with Easter on it. I think we've established that. But the point about multi-faith Britain, I don't think you can make an argument, as we were making earlier on, that different people aren't doing enough to integrate into the country, and then say the king shouldn't be inclusive of all the different faiths during the coronation. I actually think Prince Charles and His Royal Highness the King and the rest of the royal family are actually treading quite a good line when it comes to inclusivity, because they know that in order for the monarchy to sustain, they need to be attractive to all parts of the population.
But ultimately, the Church is the supreme governor of the Church of England is King Charles. He is there to defend that faith. So I don't think he should apologise. Of course,
but he's not apologising. He's defending the faith and others as well.
What's the problem? He is defender of the faith.
Why is that apologise? I didn't hear a sorry. I've not heard a sorry. Did he say sorry at all? I didn't hear him say sorry.
He should be loud and proud about
this. Making a very important point here, and it's not about fighting about who has the most prominent faith or a policeman handing out sweets at Ramadan or whatever. What it's about is a very willful destruction of the religion upon which our entire society has been built, of the social mores that we follow every day, our democracy. It all finds its roots in Christianity. And what I worry about is, and we saw this in the SNP contest, didn't we? Kate Forbes being utterly vilified for holding Christian views that Hamza Yusuf was not held accountable to for his own private religious views. And what I worry about is this willful destruction of Christianity leaves a dangerous vacuum.
Well, we could have gone on longer with that one, but unfortunately...
So we've got time for.
We've reached the end there. Well, it's been another great show. I thank you very much for getting involved. Next up, it's going to be the brilliant Steve N. Allen. He's standing in for Mark Dolan. You'll want to watch that one. Cheers very much for your company. We'll see you again next week.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Hope you've been enjoying the Easter weekend so far. There has been plenty of fine weather and we'll continue to see more of that into Sunday. There are fronts out in the Atlantic that are slowly going to make their progress towards the UK, but high pressure is keeping them at bay for the moment and keeping things fairly fine and settled. Just a bit more of a breeze across western areas, and that will be strengthening as we head throughout the rest of this evening and through tonight, but many of us will remain dry and with some clear intervals. Some low cloud pushing into parts of eastern England and Scotland as well, maybe a few fog patches around, but with the breeze and the increasing cloud, temperatures won't drop too far. Most towns and cities will hold up around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. Could be a bit of a murky start again in the east, but as the breeze again strengthens here, that should hopefully help lift some of that cloud out of the way, and most of England, Wales and Scotland should see some sunny intervals throughout the day. The sunshine though will be turning hazy as this cloud from the west pushes in, and we'll see some outbreaks of rain into Northern Ireland later on. Temperatures climbing up compared to Saturday, around 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, but in that strengthening breeze, it will just take the edge off the feel of